But I do think one thing that really irks me on the left, and I don't really have a lot of faith in the right, so you tend to criticize the people that you line up more, that you care more about, and that would be the Democrats for me. People lost trust in them because the voters were saying there was a concern. There were people across the board saying they had a concern. And the Democrats said, no, over here, look over here. They told the voters what to care about, and they did not listen when the voters said they cared. So these stories come out aren't about beating a dead horse. It's saying if they could have a fair conversation that we heard you, we saw it as they saw it, they'd be gaining some of the voters back to say, okay, we're not going to keep saying that.
You agree with
It all started with chaos, right there on live TV. The View, a show known for its political chatter and hot takes, turned into a full-blown verbal battlefield. The topic? Joe Biden's mental health. But this time, it wasn't just another debate. It was a full-scale implosion. You could see it building. The tension between the co-hosts, thick as smoke.
No, I don't. I think that I want to move on from why the Democratic Party lost, and I want to hear from the Democratic Party about how we are going to take our country back and how what they are going to do to combat fascism and what they're going to do to stop the Medicaid cuts that are going on, to stop giving tax cuts to billionaires, to stop taking federal workers' pensions away, to stop taking federal jobs away, to stop taking education away, to stop attacking our institutions, to stopping, why is this Trump administration stopping medical research, cancer? I want to talk about why this administration is giving refugee status to South African white Afrikaners as opposed to Afghans and Ukrainians and people of color. That's what I want to talk about.
And then, boom, the gloves came off. Some of the women on the panel were ready to defend the Democratic Party, no matter what. Deny, deflect, distract, that was their game plan. But others? They weren't having it. They'd had enough.
77% of Americans in 2023 said Joe Biden was too old to run again. And they were told, sit down, shut up, he is the nominee. And then when it became untenable and he stepped aside, they anointed Kamala Harris. There was not a primary, there was not a democratic process. And then when she lost, they said, don't look backward, we're moving forward, we're not even going to talk about why we didn't listen to you. We had Joe Biden here last week. It was an honor to have him. I think he is a good man. I do not think he could have been president for 4 more years. The hardest job on the planet.
Can this guy be president?
He was elected. I didn't vote for it.
But President Biden took responsibility at this table, which is something that I'm frustrated with the Democrats. He said,
he did take
this falls on me. And I said that was the clearest answer of what people needed to hear.
He took responsibility at this table, she said, which is something that I'm frustrated with the Democrats about. He said, this falls on me. And I said, that was the clearest answer of what people needed to hear. One of them outright said this could be the biggest political scandal in modern American history. Her claim? That the American people were lied to. For 4 years, they were told Biden was fine, sharp, capable, totally in control. But behind the scenes, there were whispers. Whispers that he wasn't the one running the show. And suddenly, the table turned into a war zone. It wasn't just about politics anymore. It was about betrayal.
People are quoted in this book of saying they would be boxed out of meetings if they raise concerns, and there's very specific examples. George Clooney goes on the record to Jake Tapper and says he moved mountains. He flew in from Italy to do this record fundraiser for Joe Biden. Joe Biden didn't recognize George Clooney, one of the most recognizable, one of the most recognizable men on the planet. And now that's not a presidential duty. It's not the job. You don't have to recognize George Clooney. But does that give you confidence that in the middle of the night, if China's about to attack us, there's a war breaking out in Iran, that he is the sharpest person to be able to handle that?
Which administration texted war plans to their brother?
The Trump, but it's just like
Joe Biden.
No, but do we just keep lowering the bar because Trump is bad? Nothing else is bad because Trump is bad?
But that can also be true.
Yeah, but the ship has sailed. It's out in the ocean somewhere with Biden.
We have Trump
it's over. Get over it.
No, we have Trump because you guys screwed this up. With all due respect.
All right, but does it help?
About what happens when people in power lie to your face and then tell you you're crazy for noticing something's wrong. By the way, before we continue, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and share more intriguing stories. Now let's continue.
I actually think we
I
have
mean,
Trump
really.
because the Trump administration, Trump lied to people. I think that's why we.
He won more votes. That is a fact.
I think he lied to his base. I think he told his base that they were going to their overtime would not be taxed. That was a lie.
Actually, that's in the new tax bill. It's literally in the tax bill.
They had to fight to put that in. They had to fight to put that back in. He had every intention of taking away that.
That's not true. He ran on no tax on tips, and it's in the tax bill.
Yeah, but it wasn't in it originally. I also think
drafted
that a lot of
now.
people are. And Swazi pointed it out that it wasn't in there. I think the other thing that people need to realize is that they were lied to. The federal workers that voted for him, farmers that voted for him, immigrants that voted for him, they were lied to. That is why we have Trump, not because
And I'm going to
of
give
any
you
other driving force.
Then came Sarah Haynes, calm but fed up. She didn't play for the Republican team, not at all. But that's what made her words hit even harder. She called out her own side, the Democrats. Her frustration poured out as she talked about how voters did try to raise the alarm. Across the country, people were saying something felt off with Biden, not just conservatives, not just conspiracy theorists, regular voters. And what did the Democratic Party do? They told them to shut up. They told them to stop asking questions and look somewhere else. No, not that. Look over here. That was the message. It wasn't just dismissive. It was manipulative. Sarah said it plain. If the Democrats had just listened, if they had acknowledged those concerns instead of brushing them off, maybe they wouldn't have lost so much trust. Maybe they wouldn't be stuck in this mess now. She wasn't trying to attack. She was trying to tell the truth. Because in politics, the truth isn't just uncomfortable. It's dangerous. And that's exactly what this whole conversation exposed. The danger of silencing voters. The danger of pretending everything's okay when it clearly isn't. And the real kicker? If the party had just had a fair, honest conversation, they might have actually won back some of those voters. But instead, they doubled down on denial. But here's the part that really cracked the whole thing open. Why the Democrats are so desperate to move on and pretend none of this ever happened. It's not just embarrassment. It's fear. Because according to the voices on that stage, this wasn't a simple cover-up. This was something far deeper. This was the Democratic elite, names like Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, and Barack Obama, allegedly pulling strings behind the scenes. All while America was told Biden was in charge. Think about what that means. For 4 straight years, decisions were being made, bills signed, policies pushed, and no one really knew how much Biden understood, or even if he was aware of what he was doing. That's not just mismanagement. That's a breakdown of government. Now add this twist. Joe Biden, once firmly against gay marriage and integration, is suddenly the face of progressive values. Pride flags at the White House. Children being taught controversial gender ideologies in school. And we're supposed to believe he made all these shifts from the heart? No. Critics on the panel said what many are thinking. He's being used, a puppet. And while the American media played along, telling us Biden was the sharpest he's ever been, foreign leaders weren't fooled. They didn't watch CNN. They watched him. They saw the confusion, the blank stares, the forgotten words. And they acted accordingly. Russia invaded Ukraine. China ramped up threats against Taiwan. Iran grew bold enough to back Hamas in attacks on Israel. These weren't coincidences. According to the most vocal critics on The View that day, these were direct consequences of having a leader who wasn't mentally present and a political party that refused to admit it. Because here's the cold truth they dropped. When your president is weak, the world gets dangerous fast. Enemies don't wait. They strike when they see confusion, when they smell weakness. And while everyday Americans were being told everything was fine, adversaries were reading the situation in real time. But the scariest part? The Democrats knew. Said the panel, they saw what the world saw. But instead of stepping in, they propped Biden up, knowingly. And now they want to just move on. Sweep it all under the rug. As if global security wasn't shattered in the process. As if none of it mattered. Then Sunny Hostin jumped in. And that's when things took a hard turn. While others were trying to hold the Democratic Party accountable, Sunny made it crystal clear. She didn't want to talk about the past. She didn't care about how or why the Democrats lost trust. She wanted to focus on resisting fascism, fighting tax cuts for billionaires, protecting federal pensions, defending institutions, and somehow blamed all of that on Trump's administration. She unleashed a laundry list of issues, connecting them all to Trump and his policies, without addressing any of the criticism about Biden's leadership or the alleged cover-up. It was like she was living in a different conversation. No matter what was brought up, she shifted the focus to Trump. Trump bad. Trump dangerous. Trump's fault. And while she rattled off one emotional point after another, there was something missing. Accountability. She didn't mention the mental health concerns. She didn't mention voter betrayal. She didn't mention global instability. Just deflection after deflection. But here's what really fired people up. She even criticized refugee policies, accusing the administration of favoring white South African applicants over Afghans and Ukrainians. It felt like a scattershot attack on everything and everyone, except her own party. That's when the atmosphere on set really started to boil. The division was sharp. Some wanted truth and reflection. Others, like Sunny, just wanted to rage against Trump and act like none of the Biden problems were real. And that's when the tension exploded. The response to Sunny's rant wasn't polite. It was fierce. The argument wasn't just about politics anymore. It was about reality itself. Critics pointed out that Sunny wasn't offering solutions. She wasn't talking about finding a better candidate or fixing the mistakes. She was calling for resistance, opposition, but not the strategic kind. It was chaos for chaos' sake. They asked, what exactly are Democrats supposed to do right now? They don't control the House. They don't control the Senate. And they clearly don't have the presidency in any functional way. Yet Sunny was still demanding more protests, more outrage, more fighting. But against what? And with what power? The others weren't buying it. They called it what it was, performative politics. The singing, the hashtags, the dramatic speeches. None of it had moved the needle. After 4 years of dysfunction, Sunny was acting like the Democrats were the victims, that they hadn't done anything wrong, that it was all still Trump's fault. That's when it hit home. They don't want to face the truth. They can't admit that maybe, just maybe, they made a colossal mistake. Because if they do, the whole illusion comes crashing down. And that illusion is all they've got left. Then came Alyssa Farah Griffin. And she wasn't playing games. She looked Sunny straight in the eye and said what millions were thinking. This man is not mentally fit. No spin. No sugarcoating. Just the brutal truth. She pointed to what happened just a year earlier, when 77% of Americans said Joe Biden was too old to run again. And what did the Democratic Party do? They told everyone to sit down and shut up. Biden was the nominee. End of discussion. And when that started to fall apart, they didn't ask voters who they wanted. They didn't hold a primary. They simply anointed Kamala Harris, like it was royalty being passed down instead of democracy being practiced. Even when Harris failed to win over the public, the party's response was the same. Don't look back. Move forward. Forget the lies. Forget the manipulation. Just keep walking and pretend none of it happened. Alyssa reminded everyone that Joe Biden had just visited The View the previous week. She said he was a good man, but a man who clearly couldn't handle the hardest job on earth for another 4 years. And then, in the background, Sunny muttered something that said it all. When Alyssa criticized how Harris was chosen without a vote, Sunny whispered, I don't think that was wrong. No apology. No shame. Just a stunning admission that democracy doesn't matter when it's inconvenient. Alyssa didn't let that slide. She doubled down. And this time, she brought back up facts, names, and real consequences. She talked about people inside Biden's own circle being shut out of meetings just for raising concerns about his condition. This wasn't some internet rumor. This was in the room. People were being punished for telling the truth. Then came the story that made jaws drop. Actor George Clooney, yes, that George Clooney, flew all the way from Italy to help Biden at a big fundraiser. And Biden didn't recognize him. One of the most famous faces on the planet, and the President of the United States had no idea who he was. Now, sure, that's not a requirement of the job. You don't need to know celebrities. But the point was bigger. If he couldn't recognize Clooney, how's he going to react if a war breaks out in the middle of the night? If a military decision has to be made fast, is that the guy you trust? That's when Joy Behar tried to throw a life preserver, her go-to move. But Trump is worse. Alyssa snapped back. We have Trump because you guys screwed this up. The crowd erupted, because it wasn't about comparing two flawed men anymore. It was about admitting that for 4 years, people were gaslit, told to ignore what they saw. And now, the consequences were undeniable. Then came the part that exposed just how deep the denial runs. While Alyssa and Sarah were demanding accountability, Joy and Sunny kept playing defense, throwing distractions like Signalgate and random Trump mistakes to muddy the waters. But it didn't work. Alyssa stayed locked in. She reminded everyone, the Democrats weren't just wrong. They were arrogant. They believed they couldn't be wrong. They believed their intentions made them immune to criticism. Even if their choices hurt the country, it didn't matter, because in their minds, they were still the good guys. But the voters didn't see it that way. The people saw empty shelves, rising gas prices, global instability, cultural chaos, and they connected the dots. And when they pushed back, the Democrats didn't listen. They didn't explain. They didn't reflect. They smeared them, called them names, labeled them as extremists. And in doing so, they pushed millions of Americans right into Trump's arms. Not because people suddenly loved Trump, but because they were tired of being lied to, talked down to, and told their eyes were lying. While the world around them was falling apart, they were told, everything's fine. So yes, the Democrats didn't just lose votes. They lost the room. And even now, some still refuse to understand why. They can't accept that they backed the wrong man, defended him with lies, and left the country to deal with the consequences. Now came the boiling point, when Sunny and Alyssa finally clashed head-on. Sunny tried to spin it again, claiming that Trump had lied to his base, promising things like tax-free overtime that never happened. She insisted that's why Trump got elected again, not because of any Democratic failure, but because his voters were misled. But Alyssa wasn't having it. She shot back with the facts. Yes, Trump did run on eliminating taxes on tips, and it was in the new tax bill. Maybe not originally, but it was fought for and added. Sunny's claim crumbled right there on set. She tried to pivot, but Alyssa kept pushing, reminding her and the viewers, people aren't as naive as the media makes them out to be. Sunny then took it further, painting a picture of betrayed farmers, immigrants, and federal workers who were supposedly misled by Trump. But again, it didn't land, because Alyssa and others were making the bigger point. Trump didn't hide who he was. Like him or hate him, he did exactly what he said he would do. No surprises. No act. That's the key difference. While Trump voters got what they expected, Biden voters got something else entirely. A party that pretended everything was fine, while silently dragging a man through the presidency who clearly wasn't in control. And anyone who questioned it was mocked, silenced, or dismissed. That's what lit the fire. Not Trump. Not the right. But the lies. The denial. The arrogance. And that brings us to the heart of the explosion. Why this debate on The View hit so hard and went so viral. Sarah and Alyssa both pointed to the same painful truth. The Democrats ignored the people. Not just Republicans. Not just swing voters. Their own base. When Americans raised concerns about Biden, his age, his confusion, his vanishing energy, they weren't just brushed aside. They were told to be quiet, told what to care about, what issues mattered,
And what didn't?
It wasn't a conversation. It was a command. And now, after years of avoiding the truth, the consequences are everywhere. The Democrats are stuck pushing the same broken platform. More government spending, more illegal immigration, more men and women's sports, more DEI mandates, more culture wars, and a message that somehow still blames everyone but themselves. The playbook hasn't changed. Deny, distract, smear Trump, repeat. But here's the twist. Voters are no longer buying it. Because while the Democrats told them everything was fine, the world kept falling apart. And the one thing people remember most? Being told to shut up. The anger isn't just political. It's personal. It's the feeling of being lied to by the people you trusted. And no matter how many times they yell, Trump is evil, it won't erase the fact that, for 4 long years, they forced a man into the presidency who many believe wasn't capable of doing the job. And the damage from that isn't going away anytime soon. And then, just when you thought it couldn't get worse, Alyssa went on CNN and dropped the final blow. She talked about that View interview with Joe Biden, the one that had everyone talking. And she didn't hold back. She explained how she asked Biden directly about the claims of his cognitive decline. It was his chance to squash the rumors, to prove everyone wrong. But instead of answering clearly, Biden got lost mid-sentence. He wandered off topic.